You know, we just heard 3 readings. The reading from the book of Joel, which talked about gathering the people. And then a reading from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, which talked about us as being ambassadors for Christ and as those who are called to be agents of reconciliation. And then we heard the gospel, which told us how to live out our relationship with the Lord in this Lenten time. And you know, as I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, for those of us who were present here in the chapel, a week ago we had a little session where we gathered. There were 7 seniors and Doc McCullough and I and Deacon Ferraro, and we just reflected together on the scriptures. And we invited the seniors who were present to share their thoughts. And one of the thoughts that was shared by one of those present was just how we're kind of a work in progress. God understands that we are not all perfect. And we hear those words in the first reading from Joel where it says, "Return to me with your whole heart, for gracious and merciful is God, slow to anger, rich in kindness, and relenting in punishment." God understands that we're all a work in progress. We're all on a journey. And God is compassionate. That's the first message. And the second message, I think, for us from this scripture, as I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, is that we're on a journey. And, you know, in my community, the Jesuit community, one of our community members said, we should cancel Lent this year because we've had Lent all year. We've been in this journey, and this journey where we've had to let go of a lot of things. And we've had to deal with isolation. I asked the students who were present, I said, you know, we're doing Lent this year in the context of having been dealing with this pandemic for 11 months. How does that context influence what we do during Lent? And one of them said, you know, I don't think that Lent's really about making resolutions. It's about, especially in this context, we've all been dealing with isolation and having to let go of things that are important to us. And I think what's most important, this one said, is we just have to be patient and kind to each other. That's what Lent's calling us to. And I guess there's some ice on the roof. But that's what Lent's calling us to. It's calling us to say, how do we deal with difficult journey, a difficult part of our life's journey? I mean, our life has a lot of challenges. You know, as I was thinking what to say today, one of the things that came back to me was from 1998, September of 98 until May of 2012, most of those 14 years, I served as a hospital chaplain. And I used to go to the hospital every day, not knowing what I would run into, what I would step into. And it was, you know, usually every day I would meet a new patient, new families who were going through very, very life-threatening and life-challenging situations. You know, our hospital was it was the level 1 trauma center. It was a place where people came when they were very critically ill. And people were dealing with heavy, heavy things. And I was someone who walked into that situation day after day, didn't have any idea what I was going to walk into that day. And it was often very intense. And actually, it wasn't until I stopped doing it in May 2012 that I realized how much it drained me of my energies over time. Because for those 14 years, I never was not at the hospital longer than 2 weeks at one time. Usually it was just 1 week. We only could take 1 week vacation. We had to be back. So I was never really out of the flow of being with people in constant challenge and crisis. And when I did that job for those 14 years, people would say to me, it must be really depressing to do that work. And I said to them, as a matter of fact, it isn't really depressing. It doesn't mean that it wasn't hard. Didn't mean that I didn't deal with people who were suffering and had to, and was invited to accompany them in their pain and to experience some of their pain. It didn't mean it wasn't hard. But what also was present during that time was amazing grace. I got to witness how people, and not everybody could negotiate it with that kind of grace, but I got to witness how people responded to pain and suffering in a way that opened them to the support of the people like me who visited them, or the nurses who accompanied them, or the doctors, or their family members and friends who supported them. I got to witness amazing grace in action because they were open to receiving support. Or I got to witness the faith of people who could call upon their relationship with God in a time of great challenge, great pain. And it was an incredibly graced time, as well as a time of much pain and suffering. And I'm not going to go on too long because we don't have a huge amount of time, and also you don't want to listen to me forever, but one of the things that came up when we were talking about these readings was that the readings invite us, to go into our inner room. And that inner room for a lot of us isn't a physical place. It's a place where we go to be alone with God and say, God, how am I being invited to change, to be transformed, to kind of do my inner work as I deal with the challenges I face in this context? As I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, we had 7 students who joined in our reflection together, and only 3 of them are here because 4 of them are at home quarantined since we met a week ago. And so all of us, and some much more than others, have dealt with the challenge of isolation and letting go during this pandemic. And God's inviting us to say, how can I do the work of reaching out to God and to others in a way that opens me to the grace that's being offered in this moment? How do I learn from this experience? How do I receive support in this time? Because there's a lot of grief and pain that we've suffered this year. And there are others who have suffered, I know, way more than I personally have. And God's saying, I think, when I say, people are asking me, what am I doing for Lent? What am I giving up for Lent? And I'm really having a hard time coming up with giving up something because I feel like I've been giving up a lot already. But I think what I really want to do for this Lent is something very positive. I want to be open to other people's reaching out to me for support in a way that's kind and compassionate and patient. And I want to be a person who makes decisions. And I kind of challenge those of you who are students, make decisions that really do protect you and your friends and your family from the spread of this virus. I think that's both a letting go of what we'd really rather be doing rather than what we're really able to do. And it's also opening up to who can I look for who's maybe hurting more than I am, and how can I be a companion to them so that my Lent is walking with those who are feeling the weight of this pandemic more than I am, or the weight of whatever they have to let go of. So I think our Lenten resolution might be, God, help me be open to your grace And God, help me to be an ambassador, a minister of reconciliation, a person who actually reaches out and helps others feel united to me, to their families, to whomever, and to God ultimately. And I just want to conclude with a prayer. When I woke up this morning, this prayer was in my mind, and it was a prayer I've heard a long, long time ago, and I couldn't find it, so I had to make it up, which I was able to do because I thought it's a simple prayer. And this is a prayer I would just invite us to say during this Lenten time. The prayer is this, and it's part of the pointing to the inner work we need to do. Lord, let not my success or my blessings make me arrogant, but grateful. Let not my failures make me fearful, but wiser and more capable of reaching out for support. And let not pain or suffering embitter me, leave me bitter, but make me stronger and able to endure. Make me vulnerable to others, Lord, and so to you.